What's up, guys? It's Brandon Flash. Today, you're joining me in my F150 Lightning. I know it's dark out, kind of weird, but we're going to be charging the Tesla Model Y off of the Lightning and seeing how much energy it uses. So it's about 10 o'clock at night. I'm going to turn the truck on. So we're at 73% state of charge. I'm going to show you my trips here because I'm curious if it actually impacts the trips or not. So there's this trip. I'm actually going to have to leave the truck on all night because this is a 2022 F-150 Lightning Lariat extended range. And on these, you cannot leave the Pro Power on without leaving the truck on. So I'm manually turning the lights off so that I don't blind my neighbors. The truck is going to have to stay outside. I'm curious if that will drop to like crazy nothing because it's going to be on for the next 10 plus hours or so. I'm also curious how much losses we have, because in theory, we should use about 36% of the battery if we just do the math. However, I'm curious if there's kind of some overhead losses on the truck side. I'm curious overhead losses on the Tesla side, just like charging losses. Usually it's about 10% loss with AC charging. I also have Tessie that I'm running on the Tesla, so I'll have the full log of the charging session as well. So I'll see how much energy is added, and we can do some math in the morning to see in reverse how it kind of all works out. So let's get it all set up. I'm going to be using the Tesla wall connector off of the 30 amp plug in the bed of the F-150, the Pro Power onboard. I have the 9.6 kilowatt output. And we're going to be running it at full 30 amps all night. The truck will be outside. I'll run the cable out of the tonneau cover. I'll just leave it kind of propped. And then it's going to run under the garage door into the garage for the Model Y to be able to charge. And I'll, of course, like I said, have logging on it the whole time with Tessie. And then we'll check in the morning. But let's get it all set up and I'll show you guys that process. So we're up here in the Mega Power Frunk. We're going to get out the mobile connector. A little tricky with one hand. Don't need my 110 adapter or 120 adapter. I have my NEMA 1450 adapter on there already. And then it also has an adapter for the, I believe it's 14 or L1430 is the name of the plug. Yeah, L1430 that you can see there. This actually came with the truck, which is pretty cool. I'll take off this cable wrap, leave that up here so it doesn't get lost. And then since this can output 32 amps, it's actually pretty important that we turn it down to 30 amps when we plug it in on the Tesla side. So we're now back here in the bed. And interestingly, the lights aren't on here. I'm going to pop my tonneau open so you can see that. And then I'll leave it peeking out the edge. So let's get this plugged in. It's going to be a little tricky one-handed, so I'll show you in a second. So we're now going to come into Pro Power onboard on the infotainment. And then it has the different zones. We have it turned on there. We're going to turn the Pro Power reserve down pretty low. So we've already got it there, down to 15 miles. That's plenty. I can get to a charger. So here you can see under 90 watts, under 90 watts, under 90 watts. And in just a moment, these will be maxed out. So that'll be pretty cool to see. But let's go back to the bed. It is pretty cool that they also alert you that the bed outlet cover is open. So that way, if you're plugged into something, even though it can't communicate with anything, it makes you alert that you're plugged into something and that you may want to check that or you may drive off with something, because with a something plugged into the port of the truck, then it can't move at all. But with the outlets in the bed, you may actually have something plugged in that you want to leave plugged in while you're driving. So it gives you the option of leaving it on, of course. All right, so there we have it. We have a powered Tesla mobile connector. Untangle this a little bit. Trying to look through the camera well instead of that. So come here. Have to wake up the Tesla. And I parked it so that way it'd be easy to reach. We got it plugged in here. We have to go in here. I believe it's already set the limit to 30 amps because I've plugged it in like this once before. So there we have 30 amps as our limit. Getting a fault, that's weird. So 30 amps. That was weird, but looks like we're ramping up again, so seems to not be an issue. Not sure why that was wonky there for a second. So ramping up. Apologies for the dusty screen. So we're now at 30 amps. The Tesla's at 20%. I'm going to let it actually charge all the way up to 100%. Or actually, sorry, let's go to 90%. I don't need it at 100%. So going 20 to 80 should use about 36%. I'll have to do the math for 20 to 90%, but we're essentially adding 70% of the roughly 80 kilowatt hour battery pack. And then we have about 10% losses. So in theory, this should use about 43% of the Lightning battery, assuming no losses, or about 47%, including a 10% loss, but not including any standby use on the Lightning itself. So like I said, we're at 73%. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see what we end up at in the morning. But let's go into the truck and see it fully ramped up. And then we'll call it a night, and I'll see you guys in the morning to check on the fully charged Tesla. I'll also be turning the climate off on the Lightning. I forgot to mention that. So here we can see 3,600 watts on both A and B phase. Let's turn our climate off. So fully off there. Pro power onboard. So 3,600 watts, 72% as of right now. Looks like we just ticked over, so we'll use that as our starting point, I suppose. And I guess we'll be in the 30% range or so in the morning. So for a truck with almost no phantom drain, it's going to be pretty heavily drained by the morning just from sitting here, but charging a whole nother EV basically full. And just to draw a little bit less attention with screens on in my dark neighborhood, I kind of just draped my jacket over here, since you can't actually turn the screens off fully when the truck is on. So they're staying on, but at least that way they'll be kind of dimmed out, and then I'll be able to lock the truck as well while it's on. Something I forgot to mention, if you're trying to do this yourself as well, is that I actually turned off the vehicle power down timer. I have mine set to be off by default, but normally the vehicle would shut off after 30 minutes. So it's very important you turn that off if you're trying to leave the truck on to charge another EV, power camper, or whatever.
The next moment.
Well, here we are 12-ish hours later. Let's get into the Tesla and see where we're at. So we've added 54 kilowatt hour. We're of course not charging it at this point because it's up to the charge limit. Let's just see here. And there we have it. So let me pull up Tessie so I can show you the charge stats. So here you can see we used 56.87 kilowatt hours, so basically 57. And we added 54.54 kilowatt hour to the battery itself, so 96% efficiency. It charged for just shy of 8 hours, so charged from 10:13 p.m. to 6:11 a.m. It is now 11:17 a.m. this morning. Got a little bit of a late start, but you can see all the charge stats here. Held a nice flat 7 kilowatts the whole time, 30 amps the whole time. And the voltage was really nice and clean, 238 volts, which is better than some public level 2 chargers that you're at 200 volts or so. You can see interior temperature rose a little bit for whatever reason, and the exterior temperature held relatively steady just in the garage here. So let's go into the Lightning and see what it looks like in there. So here we are in the Lightning. Let's take the cover off. That seemed to work fairly well. So driver door ajar, of course, and we are at 20% state of charge. And I went back and looked because I have some logging that I use via Home Assistant, and it looks like when it finished charging, it was at about 22%. So we used a little bit of charge since it finished charging. Here we can see the trips. So it looks like it did count that time into the trips. Let's see how much it went down. So 13 hours on and 1.8 kilowatt hours. So it dropped that quite a bit from that 10 hours of using a ton of energy but not moving at all. Here you can see we're not using any energy at all. But let me turn on the climate on the Tesla and we can see how that goes up. And I've got the climate blasting on Tesla, and there we go, ramping back up. So pretty cool to see that. It's actually using a ton of power. 4 kilowatt. I did put the climate down too low, so that's why it's kind of cranking up, but that's still quite a bit of power on there. So overall, it seems like we had about a 7 kilowatt hour overhead because we used right about 50% of the battery, which would be about 65 kilowatt hour of the 131 kilowatt hour battery. But we only put about 58 kilowatt hour into the battery, or at least into the Tesla, whether that went into the battery or not. So pretty interesting to see that. Would love to hear what you guys think. If you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment down below if you haven't. See you guys on the next one.